The stress of our world can take a toll on our physical and emotional health. Here, in New York's Catskill Mountains, lies a luxurious place of healing called WION Wellness Center. The WION Wellness Center provides 500,000 square feet of natural methods to manage diabetes, hypertension, chronic pain, obesity, depression, anxiety, and other conditions. We use the traditions of centuries-old natural science from India, yoga, Ayurveda, acupuncture, and naturopathy in personalized programs that help you take charge of your own health. A minimum 5-day stay is recommended for best results. Book now at yo1.com.
Hello and welcome to this week's edition of the VOA WION co-production. I'm your host, Susan Tehrani, coming to you live from New York City. We begin with the U.S. presidential election. As Russia pushed into northern Ukraine this week, the U.S. presidential race between President Joe Biden and former President Donald Trump remained focused on another foreign policy crisis, the war in Gaza. As VOA's congressional correspondent Catherine Gibson reports, keeping America's attention on Ukraine may prove to be difficult.
The northern Ukrainian border town of Volchansk, evacuating just hours ahead of when Russia claimed it captured the town. Ukraine fighting back with the more than $50 billion in assistance from the United States approved last month by President Joe Biden. He argued for months that aid to Ukraine is a centerpiece of U.S. national security policy.
If the United States walks away, it will put Ukraine at risk. Europe is at risk. The free world will be at risk, emboldening others to do what they wish to do us harm. My message to President Putin, who I've known for a long time, is simple. We will not walk away.
But analysts say presidential elections rarely turn on foreign policy issues.
The issue of Ukraine barely registers in the polls, and the issue of foreign policy, less than 5% of the people think that's an important issue, foreign policy generally, meaning the relationship that we have with China, Communist Party of China, but also pushing back on Putin and what's happening in Gaza.
Presumptive Republican presidential nominee Donald Trump has argued the U.S. already sends too much aid. Earlier this year, the former president suggested he would not adhere to the Mutual Self-Defense Pact if Russia invaded a NATO country.
I would not protect you. In fact, I would encourage them to do whatever the hell they want.
That message resonates with voters concerned about American involvement overseas.
The 20 years of the war on terror and the so-called endless wars probably converted more Americans to isolationism and America first, and that's why Donald Trump was successful in 2016 and why he is successful at having garnered all but officially the nomination of the Republican Party for 2024.
The push against funding Ukraine's defense against Russia put some Republicans in a difficult position this election year. But after months of delay, House Speaker Mike Johnson, a Trump supporter, brought the aid up for a successful vote.
I would rather send bullets to Ukraine than American boys.
With protests against the war in Gaza taking place on college campuses across the U.S., analysts say there is a bigger election season discussion about how U.S. aid is spent abroad.
I do know a number of young voters in this country who think carefully about their student loan debts, as an example. Why are we spending these billions and billions of dollars sending armaments abroad to Ukraine and sending armaments to Israel? Why aren't we using those monies domestically for other issues that need caring for in this country?
The aid to Ukraine approved by Congress in April is likely to be the last disbursement this year before the November presidential election. Catherine Gibson, VOA News.
Joining us with additional reporting is VOA correspondent Jessica Stone. She's live for us at the White House. Hi, Jessica. Well, this week, Washington slapped a new round of tariffs on China. How is that decision playing into the presidential campaign, and how has Beijing reacted?
Well, you've literally now got a coalescence of policy when it comes to trade between U.S. and China, between the two parties. You've got President Trump, who, of course, in 2018 started levying tariffs at the 25% level against things like Chinese goods and certainly some Chinese vehicles. Now we've got President Biden this week announcing that he would increase that rate to 100% taxes. And in turn, we've heard Donald Trump, who's, of course, the Republican candidate for president and the likely nominee, saying, okay, I am going to double that. So I'm going to go up to 200%. So you have a competition between these two candidates at who could be tougher on China vis-a-vis the trade picture. And that is really politically helpful in many ways for both of them. Because there is a sense in the United States, of course, in some parts of the United States that came out for Trump in the 2016 election, that their jobs are coming at a cost to Chinese manufacturing. And so both of these groups are likely to be felt heard by the candidates, and it's certainly playing into U.S. politics quite intensely as a result. In terms of Beijing's response, they have certainly responded rhetorically, said that they will retaliate. It's not clear exactly how. They haven't laid out any specifics, but analysts say that they tend to find ways to penalize the U.S. in ways that do not penalize Chinese industry. So we'll have to see what happens next.
Also this week, Washington and Beijing held their first round of talks on artificial intelligence since Presidents Biden and Xi met in person last November. What have we learned about that?
Well, the purpose of those meetings, as it was set up in November, was in particular to try to avoid accidents and things like war that are driven by decisions made by artificial intelligence. And what we know is that Washington raised concerns about China's misuse of artificial intelligence, while Beijing complained about Washington's export controls on technology that supports China's development of artificial intelligence. It's in particular the chips wars that are going on, the restrictions by the U.S. government on exports from the United States of highly advanced semiconductor chips. And Beijing has previously voiced anger over this very issue because it is so central to their efforts to pioneer in this part of the economy. Beijing also asking the United Nations to regulate artificial intelligence instead of doing it bilaterally between the U.S. and China and between other major exporters of this type of technology. Analysts, though, say that just the fact that these two countries are talking about this is a sign of success, that if we see another meeting scheduled after this week's meeting in Switzerland, it will also be a sign that this area of it's not cooperation or confrontation, but certainly conversation is a good sign.
Well, great. Thank you so much for that. Jessica, please do stay with us as we talk about the war in Gaza and possible delivery of military aid over there. Protesters disrupted Google's annual conference this week over the tech giant's deal, providing artificial intelligence and other services to the Israeli government. Matt Dibble has the story from Mountain View, California.
Because we will not stop till Nimbus gets dropped!
Gaza war protesters rallied at Google headquarters in Mountain View, California on Tuesday, the opening day of the tech giant's annual developers conference. At issue is Project Nimbus, its contract to provide cloud computing and artificial intelligence services to the Israeli government. Ariel Koren, a former Google employee, was among the demonstrators.
Google is providing power to the Israeli military to build out the surveillance apparatus that is used to surveil millions of Palestinians and to generate the powerful AI systems that are being used to perpetrate history's first ever AI-enabled genocide.
Koren says she was forced out of Google in 2022 after speaking out about Project Nimbus, a $1.2 billion contract between Google, Amazon, and Israel. Since the outbreak of the Israel-Hamas war, Google employees have taken part in protests, including sit-ins in company offices in California and New York that led to the reported firings of around 50 employees. Koren says the firings have had a chilling effect.
As scary as it might be to put your job on the line, Palestinians in Gaza are fighting for their lives, and the least that tech workers can do is take a stand when their companies are guilty of fueling that genocide.
Google did not immediately reply to a request for comment, but in an earlier statement to other news outlets, a spokesperson said the Nimbus contract is, quote, not directed at highly sensitive, classified, or military workloads relevant to weapons or intelligence services. About 200 attended Tuesday's rally, organized by a coalition of area anti-war groups. Some protesters cite an earlier success as a reason to remain hopeful this time. In 2018, internal pressure kept Google from renewing a contract it had with the U.S. government.
It was canceled due to mass opposition from Google workers inside of that company due to the understanding that it would have a military use case. Google has a supposed motto of don't do evil. Supporting military occupations is a form of evil that we oppose.
Though protesters blocked one entrance, the conference proceeded as planned. Reem, who asked not to use her last name, is attending the conference with her university's Google Developers Club. The Moroccan national says she is sympathetic to the protesters' concerns, but would still like to work for Google if given the chance.
I really want to use technology in a good way, be able to kind of like unite people in some ways, bring people together, that kind of stuff. That's why I'm not against working for big tech companies, because the bigger the company is, the more chance you have of making an impact on the world.
Keeping big tech out of the war business may be impossible, but it's where these protesters want to make their impact. Matt Dibble, VOA News, Mountain View, California.
VOA's Jessica Stone is live with us from the White House. Jessica, thank you for staying with us. The U.S. military has now completed a pier in Gaza to deliver aid. How soon will supplies of food and fuel be sent? Do we know?
Well, it looks as though the humanitarian aid has already begun to flow beginning on Friday local time. The plan was really to bring boatloads of humanitarian aid to a port facility built by the Israelis near Gaza City and allow the United Nations to work directly with humanitarian groups to disperse that aid. U.S. officials say as much as 500 tons of food are expected to begin flowing to the Gazan refugees today. They say eventually U.S. troops could deliver up to 2 million meals a day using this pier, especially with Israelis' cooperation. But of course, humanitarian aid groups also say that this cannot be the only solution to the refugee crisis, that the land crossings still need to be open and active to deliver much needed food and fuel.
Jessica, also this week, it was interesting to see that the United States signaled that it's sending more military aid to Israel. What do we know about that?
So this is the military aid that was paused when Washington tried to express that it did not want the invasion of Rafah to take place, certainly not with U.S. military funding and backing. This is $1 billion in arms and ammunition, according to congressional aides, and it's $700 million in tank ammunition, 500 vehicles, and 60 more mortar rounds, I should say. This is the shipment that was paused last week, and House Republicans have now passed legislation just in the past 10 hours or so that would force Washington's hand to continue to mandate shipment of offensive weaponry to Israel. That, of course, has to go through the Senate, and the White House has said it would veto such legislation, but because the White House is trying to remain independent of the Congress in terms of how it prosecutes foreign policy. But an ongoing issue here in Washington, certainly, and that $1 billion appears to be unfrozen to head to Israel at this point.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much for all of that and those updates. VOA's Jessica Stone joining us live from the White House this Friday. Happy weekend, Jessica.
Thank you.
Fast-moving thunderstorms are pummeling southeastern Texas for the second time this month. At least 4 have lost their lives. Officials are urging residents to keep off roads as many remain impassable and traffic lights are expected to be out. Pounding rain astonished supermarket customers in Houston as they were virtually stranded within the premises due to the sheer intensity of the storm. Not only this, but hundreds of windows also shattered at downtown hotels and office buildings, with glass littering the streets below. The state is sending Department of Public Safety officers to the secure area.
So the initial indications are that we had fallen trees caused 2 of the fatalities. One was a crane accident as well that was blown over by the wind, or the strong winds. So right now, the Houston Police Department, they're on the scene. They're doing the investigation. So we won't know the exact cause of death, but that's what the indications are right now.
Power has been out for nearly 900,000 homes and businesses in the Houston area. The storm system moved through swiftly. But flood watches and warnings remained active for Houston and the areas to the east. Flights were briefly grounded at Houston's 2 major airports. Sustained winds topping 96 kilometers per hour were recorded at the Bush International Airport. The damage extended to the city's suburbs. The Houston Independent School District canceled classes for all of its 274 campuses. Heavy storms slammed the region during the first week of May, leading to numerous high water rescues, including some from the rooftops of flooded homes. It's time for a short break. On the other side, watch the story to know how Oxford University researchers have proved Einstein was correct about a key prediction concerning black holes.
This week on Inside South Asia, wave upon wave of massive